we've now heard from DQ just about once a week for a month. And I suppose there was, it was interesting after the draft to hear from him on all the guys they signed. Then there's rookie camp. That's the first time he's seen Jaden, or I guess the first time officially he's seen Jaden. Then last week's the first time with veterans. Today, there's really not a heck of a lot. Like, are there any pressing questions for Dan Quinn? I can't really think of any. Maybe you want more information on Johnny Newton's foot, but that seems like a reach. Jeff, in the deep space of Commanders Twitter, is there something that people are dying to know?
I'm not sure. I haven't checked the deep spaces today.
I feel like you live in the deep spaces. Landville, is there a pressing Dude, it is funny. I will joke with other reporters about that at various times have covered the Commanders and the artist previously known as the Redskins. And they'll complain about how rough and awful it is. And I was like, man, you chose this. I was born into this. Landville, any pressing question for you for Dan Quinn?
Honestly, not really. It kind of seems like it's a weird feeling going into a season with the Commanders where there's not some absurd controversy or just obvious massive flawed position group. I guess my concern would just be more like a general: is the offensive line up to keeping Jaden upright? And
sure.
But I know that's not really something that you are going to get a good answer out of them in May.
Right. And especially right now with there's zero contact at these events, right? These OTAs. So the offensive linemen, they pretty much exclusively run 7-on-7. In 2 weeks when we're out here for minicamp, like the mandatory minicamp, we'll get at least a somewhat better idea of what's going on because there'll at least be some level of lines of scrimmage. But I think the O-line's a real question. I did a podcast with the Hogs Haven guys last night, and this dude, DC Sports Dre, who's just a good, smart football guy, he and I don't want to say we disagreed, but here's my thing with the Commanders. These guys were asking me last night if I feel like a Houston type of turnaround is possible. And I think one that is setting the bar just way, 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 way too high. I think what Houston did is far more exception than rule. I think this team could have a good season and win 7 games, but if you get if you get a definitive answer that Jaden is the guy, that's more important than going 9-8 and making a wild card game. If you answer the question at quarterback, if you can answer the question that in Washington hasn't been answered probably most accurately since Joe Theismann, then that is far more important than a one-off season and going to a playoff game. If you can answer it and win 10 games and go to a playoff game, that's awesome. And odds are, if you are going to a playoff game, if you do have some semblance of the success Houston had, that means Jaden answers the question on his own. And the debate is pretty irrelevant. I think the worst thing that can happen is to get no clarity at the quarterback position. Say Jaden plays 4 games, it's kind of up and down, and then there's an injury or something. That's the worst case scenario to me. By all accounts and all my interactions with him, he seems like the right guy off the field and in his football habits. And I just think that is so vital going forward, especially for an organization where the quarterback for a long time has been a lightning rod, and that especially, when they sign – I don't know. The amount of quarterback angst over the years for Commanders fans is fairly unparalleled. Maybe Cleveland gives them a run for their money, but by far what's most important is Jaden being the answer. But what makes me hesitant to predict something like Houston, one, to your earlier point, Landville, is the Texans had Laramie Tunsil, and he's a Pro Bowl, All-Pro level left tackle. And there's not many positions of that importance around the league, especially when you have a young quarterback. And I think that gets forgotten in the conversation. But Stroud also just came in and balled out. And when you get a quarterback that's excellent, it changes everything. So I would not rule that out, but I do think Houston – people get caught up on Washington on paper, I guess, maybe has better skill positions than Houston did this time last year. That might be true, but I think the trenches might be more important, especially when you have an excellent quarterback, somebody that's playing at a really high level. Like if you look what Mahomes has done since Tyreek left, I mean, he does have Kelsey, but excellent quarterbacks – it's way easier for excellent quarterbacks to get a lot out of good receivers than it is great receivers to get a lot out of an okay quarterback. Like, that's a very dependent position. And basically I got to this space with this team. I just have significant concerns about the depth. I don't think they have much depth. And where me and Dre kind of disagreed was the receiver position. Terry's obviously an established star, right? I like Jahan. I think he can have a big bounce-back year. I think last year the offense was just so broken, and then over the course of the season, the entire structure of the organization was just broken. And last year I kind of look at it as a wash in a lot of ways. I think Jahan can have a big bounce-back year. I like Luke McCaffrey. It'll be interesting to see if he's an inside or an outside guy. He's kind of a big guy to be playing on the inside, but, that's what they have these months and months of practice for, is to figure all that out. But after that, there's not even a receiver that a defensive coordinator is, like, concerned about. Like, your fourth receiver, as it stands right now, is it Crowder? Is it Demarier Bird that they just signed 2 weeks ago? Dax Milne? De'Ami Brown? Olamide Zaccheaus? Like, I don't get how you could say you like the depth at wideout. Jeff, you tend to be the most Ashburn syndrome-y of us all. You famously told us that Cam Sims was going to have 5 touchdowns 2 seasons ago. Do you see that as I do, or do you see it differently?
I think our wide receiver depth is pretty good, but
I don't understand this mindset. How?
I mean, well, it's just me falling in love with Terry and Jahan. I think just last season was an off season for Jahan. I think he's going to come back. I think we're going to be pretty decent this year at wide receiver.
But you realize those are just 2 dudes, and it's a position group that carries 6, maybe 7 on a roster.
Yeah, it's like we got to see it first, JP. I think we will know more this year with our receivers, because our receivers, like, they have builds to be good receivers, like a tough receiver core, It's just, I think this year we will really see with a quarterback as good as we think Jaden is going to be, and with the different scheme drawn up with Cliff, I think we might see some breakout seasons for our receiver core. We might see better production from our receiving core this year.
I think that is Ashburn syndrome. But you may be proven correct, and maybe Cliff schemes it up better. I think certainly Jaden, the expectation is that they play at a higher level. I'm just saying that, like, what Adam Peters is trying to do here is a long-term rebuild based on draft picks. Right, and then you look at the Niners receivers from this past season. You had Ayuk, Debo, Juwan Jennings, Ray McLeod. I mean, that's 4 deep, and then I just think, like, they're going to have to add to this group over time, and I'm just not entirely convinced they have a ton there right now. We're counting on McCaffrey, or you know what I mean? Like, we're penciling in a late 3rd round rookie as the definitive 3rd wideout? It's going to be interesting. And I think, to Landfill's earlier point about the offensive line, like, they have holes like that, or they have at least question marks like that all over the roster. And that is just, when folks want to talk about Houston or turning stuff around, like, just chill. Just let's see how it looks when they get out here.